Quite a while ago, when I first started implementing procedural generation in my game, I just stuck this flat quad over the world in order to represent the ocean. It does work as a placeholder, but it also looks like a placeholder. And clearly none of the entities in my world think it's water either, as they all just walk over it. Obviously though, the player and the various entities should interact with the water in some way, as it could become a cool gameplay element after all. So, I propose we give the player some swimming lessons, and a cool animation to go along with it. Let's spend this week building a proper animation for when the player enters the water, well, maybe not the entirety of this week. For those regular viewers, this week might be a bit different, as I'm actually going to London for a social event this weekend. The capital. Ooh. I do make weekly devlogs on this channel, but some weeks will be a bit cursed. I will have my laptop with me, so we'll likely be able to do some work. But starting out this week, I just thought, let's use this as a sacrifice week instead and fix some of the bugs that I've just been stockpiling. There are quite a few half-baked things in the game at the moment, like this level screen. Why does it look like that? To be honest, the project could probably do with some time to fix some of those bugs. So, let's get to it. Well, as it was in the thumbnail, let's talk about the swimming first. Really, this was a pretty simple job. I just had to move some code around so each time an entity moves, they query their current voxel in the map to find if it's water. If it is water, then firstly apply some damping to their movement speed to make it seem as if they've started swimming. Secondly, I dropped their Z position slightly so their place just head out of the water. Okay, well that looks pretty interesting, so let's add the animation. I made this pretty simple breaststroke animation and then tried to jam it into the game. I initially just thought to stick it in using the rudimentary method I'd used before, but gradually came to the realization that I needed something more complex. Previously, this bit of code was how I was animating characters while in the world. I pretty much just started and stopped certain animations based on whether the player was moving. However, this wouldn't scale if I was going to add swimming to it, as it was just broken all over the place. So I decided I would need to switch my animation system over to a state machine. Pretty much, the state machine now manages the animation state for entities. The different states are responsible for starting and stopping the animations, and I added this event system to deal with some of the weird cases. For example, notifying the entity that they have entered or left the water can be done like this. The states can process the information accordingly, and the life cycle of the animation doesn't become too complicated. So, let's look at the improved animation. So, I think it works quite well. I do like the gameplay aspect of the player going slower in the water, and I do intend to add some enemies that can swim and some that can't. The good thing about this approach is I get the same animations to work for the goblin for absolutely free, as they all just inherit the animations from each other. I really like the look of the goblin swimming through the water to chase the player, but I'd also decided that that was enough for this week, as I had lots of other stuff that I wanted to fix. First thing that I wanted to try and improve was the entity targeting. You might remember from last week that entity targeting was just completely kiboshed. There were loads of things that just didn't work with it. And spoiler alert, this ended up being one of the more complex things I worked on this week. I made a total of 6 commits relating to the entity targeting, as there were just numerous issues with it. For instance, this one where the player would destroy a target, and then as soon as they start to move again, they would begin attacking. Eventually I broke down and decided I needed to get started on a unit testing suite in order to properly unit test this stupid system. The unit testing was a fantastic idea, and really I made a massive mistake in not doing that earlier. It did help stabilize things very much, but I ran out of time for this week in order to get the level of testing that I would actually like. However, entity targeting is far more improved compared to it was last week. The player can actually walk up to enemies, attack them, they'll begin the attack, there won't be any janky animation where the player moves back and forth, and other entities will actually chase the player in a manner that seems reasonable. Likely I'll be working on this for a long time though. The next adventurous item that I tried to deal with this week was cross-platform support. Now the thing is, I do have cross-platform support in the engine, but I do have to try and run the game every now and again just to check it still actually works as I expect. I'm aiming for the 3 major desktop operating systems for this game, as well as Android and iOS for the mobile platforms, and I'm developing the game on a Mac, so I need to make sure that it works well on the other ones. Linux is generally quite reliable, but I did have a few weird crashes caused by me not returning correct values in some engine functions. And honestly, it highlighted these issues, and I'm glad it did because they're fixed now. That was really just a lack of due diligence on my part. My world map, which you see in the corner, is currently being rendered with a shader, which is written in metal. This means that the world map essentially can't be displayed on anything that isn't an Apple device. Ogre as a graphics engine doesn't have its own sort of cross-platform shader language like some of their engines do, which means that I would have to duplicate my code from Metal to GLSL to HLSL, but that was a rabbit hole and I eventually decided that I did not want to go down it. I just disabled the world map rendering in Linux for now, and my plan going forward is to just construct the texture to be displayed on the CPU and then upload it to the GPU, where it will just be easy to render from that point. This can be done cross-platform, and I don't think the performance hit will be too bad, as I'm already generating the world on the CPU anyway. I also fixed some memory issues relating to the input system in Linux, and after that, it was working suitably. Now for everyone's least favourite operating system, Windows. Of course I joke, but it is quite popular somehow. I notoriously don't like developing on it, as I feel far more comfortable on a Unix operating system. But you gotta do it for the audience, so I did get part of the way through the port before I ran out of time, as per tradition. I also had problems with the Docker engine on Windows, as it wouldn't build my modified voxel container image, and just generally prolapsed itself on Friday. There were problems all over the place, but I do love a challenge, so it'll work next week, boys. But seriously though, I do think I might have to take one for the team and actually try and do some development on Windows, because I need to dog food the platform in general, just to make sure that the engine works on it as expected. I do neglect it, but unfortunately most users are going to be using it, so I need to make sure it works there. Anyway, let's end this video off with a quick fire round of small fixes. Rolling the mouse or touch input over the end exploration button on the gateway no longer triggers it, you actually have to physically press it. This is great because you used to just get erroneous taps of that button all over the place. Entities now conform to the world Z position like the player, where previously they were just animating like diagonally. Entities now only spawn on landmasses, as previously they just spawn wherever they felt like it. I also tested the system with far larger worlds and ended up fixing a few problems as a result of that. And that's it. It was a pretty hyperactive week this week. I ended up writing much of this script while in a hotel and editing some of this video while on a coach. So drop a like and leave a comment about how insane I am. But it's a video every week, lads, so don't forget it. The city was rammed anyway. We managed to forget that it was the king's official birthday, so it was just completely rammed with tourists. I went in one of those sensory deprivation tanks just for a giggle, and to be perfectly honest, I thought it was one of the stupidest things I've ever done, and ended up getting out after 20 minutes. If you ever want to only see black and feel floaty, you might as well just become an alcoholic. We also went to this restaurant where they serve all the food to you in complete darkness, and that was actually kind of interesting. So here's some footage of that. I would actually recommend that if you're looking for an interesting experience. But anyway, this is a game dev channel, so the week has ended. See you in the next one.